The trolley problem. Most of us know it. It's a classic. We've seen the memes. A trolley on a track that diverges. You control the lever that decides which track the trolley goes on one of the tracks. One person is tied down, on the other 4 or any other number of people are tied down. The question posed, which track do you send it down, knowing you're condemning 1 or 4 people to their doom? Just like Zeno's paradox, there's a lot more under the surface and beyond the initial question. We've reduced it in the ubiquity of it, so its observations get watered down to meme-sized categorizations and punchlines, and to be honest, most are hilarious. I love them, but it also kind of misses the functional intent of what this posed thought experiment really is. So, just to take a look at it, what is the right answer? It's not a riddle, but a posed question. What is good and what is right in this situation? So, it's about the journey, not the destination. So I wanted to mention some basic philosophy concepts, because it's hard to look at this, as always with these sorts of things, when we're not all on the same page. So because we can't give a quantifiable, empirical answer to a lot of these kind of right and wrong questions, we give comparisons, with one end of the comparison being favored over the other. And it's usually something like, it's better to be doing well and good than poorly and bad. It's better to be satiated than hungry. It's better to feel pleasure than pain. It's of a higher order of virtue to help than to harm. Something even later on became, it's more godly to be pious than sinful. In the trolley problem, let's say our aim for a right answer is, in this microcosm of what's posed in the problem, it means what's better for these 5 people. That's part of the trick. All too often people say, what if one of these people is a murderer or a charity worker or this celebrity or that politician? But we can't do that, because that puts a finger on the scale of this whole experiment. There can be no kids, no charity they run, they don't have somebody's inhaler in their pocket. It's 5 anonymous people. Who they are, their entire lives don't matter in this. They can't. Otherwise, that's an ethical scale where it's about the morality of the others, the morality of the people on the track, and not about the goodness of the self. The question is, what track do you select? You. That's the other trick. There's 6 people in this problem, not the 5 on the track. So, if you put a jerk's name anywhere on the meme and in the picture, it becomes a moral statement about that other person, not a qualitative expression of your values. It becomes this thing that you hold up, and it says, hey, look at this jerk on the track, let's run him over. Be careful not to add things outside of it that change the point of it. Usually this all means doing the most good. That's basic Star Trek. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. Let's jump ahead to a couple of conclusions. You want to save the lives of the people who will do the most good in the future. Unless you're so short-sighted that you want to use this opportunity to punish and wreak vengeance on those who've done the worst in the past. In which case, that's your answer. Kill the most people because everyone's done something wrong. It's dumb, but that's the kind of mentality that supports the death penalty in a select few countries around the world today. Remember, these people are tied to the tracks. You can just arrest afterward anyone who survives. That's, again, thinking a little bit outside of the framework of the question. A good way to think of this, I think, is that each one of these people are in a Schrödinger's cat kind of quantum superposition situation, wherein, since you, the observer, cannot know anything about their future or their past, only affect their situation now, they are all equally good and equally bad. And if you spool this out to infinitely good and infinitely bad for each one of them, because you can't tell, then it doesn't matter if it's one person versus 4 or one person versus 4 million. You cannot say which way is better. since they, outside of what you know, can have such varying levels of good and bad, and think it even through further, not even them, but their offspring and their work and their research. So if it turns out that after the experiment, it turns out that you spared 3 average people and 1 infinitely bad person, by killing 1 person, they're dead, and you spared an infinitely bad person. So we take a step back. All you can do here in this trolley problem is to minimize the ethical and moral damage that you yourself cause. This may seem selfish, a very self-centered solution. Well, I don't want that guilt. I don't want that karma. You have no control over which is the right answer. It's a situation where you can only try to do the least amount of bad for people, or 1. All things being equal, 1's a lower number than 4. That's it. If I have to choose one of these tracks, it behooves me to actively choose to do the least harm. Now you may say, well, you can just abstain from choosing. Chess moves on that, and I think those are very interesting kind of tints to put on the choice of inaction, which is an interesting step beyond left or right. But if you have the chance to actively do less harm, is that not better? This is also used to justify a lot of awful first strike situations, which again always relies on outside situations. So that's not a trolley problem thing. That's not a fair thing to use for acts of war like the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, other mass casualty events, any kind of real world violence. That's not what this is about, because those are always motivated. Those are always motivated by that judgment of the parties involved, tied to the hypothetical tracks, and that becomes a justification. Twisting the words of Star Trek or Plato are pretty easy if you take them in poor faith. So the simplest reduction of the trolley problem, when we remove all external factors, what do I choose? I choose to do the least harm.